Okay, just a quick little video, hopefully, to show you how to modify your mag rail here so that you can bolt it into the shroud without having to remove, without having to like screw it on or glue it on or anything like that. So first thing you're going to want to do is make yourself up some of the correct hardware. So if you take yourself an M3 countersunk head, socket head bolt like this, focus. Yeah, this is a 35mm one. You're going to want to cut it down to 6mm like this. If you can find some that you can already buy at 6mm, they might be roughly the right length. Good tip for doing that is before you cut it, just thread a nut right the way on to the end, so that after you cut it you can then unscrew the nut and it will recut the threads for you. And make sure that you file and chamfer the end of it so that it threads nicely into a nut afterwards. So you're going to need 2 of those, and you're also going to need 2 non-lock nuts, M3 nuts. Right, so the first thing you're going to do is seat your rail in the shroud, in the half shroud that you want, and then you're going to take a 3mm drill bit and you are going to drill a hole. Now your hole's roughly going to be here on the shroud, so if you drill one each side or one for each half of the shroud, right the way through, so right the way through the shroud into the mag rail and out the other side, and that will create a hole going right the way through. And once you've done that with both halves of the shroud, take the mag rail out, and you're going to create the indentation for the nut on the other side. So on this other side, what you're going to do is in here you're just going to use a sanding drum on your rotary tool or a file or something to create a bit of a notch here where, in the same place that you've drilled in, and this is just so that you can get to that hole more easily. Then you're going to take either a 6.5mm or basically a drill bit that is just a little bit bigger than the head of the bolt that you're trying to, just a little bit bigger than the smallest part of the nut that you're trying to embed. Maybe 6.5 is actually a bit too big. Let me just double check. Hang on. What would I use? Maybe a 5 actually. Go with a 5mm. You see it's just a little bit smaller than the nut that you're trying to embed here. Then on this side of the rail you're going to drill, but just through the first skin of the mag rail. So you don't want to go all the way through, you're just going to drill through the first skin, so be very careful when you're doing this because it goes through very quickly. Once you've done that, you're going to take your nut, you're going to thread it onto the first part of a bolt like this, just so you've got the end of it. Then you're going to heat it up with a lighter or a blowtorch just quickly, and then you're going to push it into that hole that you've just created, and then you're going to hold it there, push it in so it's just below the surface. You can see it will go in very easily because 3D print material melts very easily, so push it in until it's just below the surface and then hold it there until I don't know, it will take quite a while for it to cool down, so you don't want to be unscrewing it or anything like that while it's still soft, because then you might enlarge the hole unnecessarily. And once you've kind of been there for, I don't know, about 30 seconds to a minute, you can then carefully unscrew the bolt and you'll be left basically with exactly this. You'll have 2 3mm holes in the back and the nuts heat set in here. So as you'll probably have guessed, you'll now have the holes that line up in the shroud with this part. The final step is to use a countersink This is just one kind of countersink, there are lots. And you're going to countersink the back of the hole here, again with a drill bit. Using a drill. You're going to countersink until you've gone deep enough so that the head of your bolt will go just below the surface. And that means that when the head of your bolt is going just below the surface, this back part will be flush, so that when you put your shroud plate back on, it will sit flush and you won't be able to see those holes. Ignore these two holes here. These are from a previous experiment in trying to secure the mag rail, which didn't work out, but this new version with these heat set nuts works very well. So just check before you all bolt it back together, check that when you put your new shortened bolts through, that they don't protrude out too far into the actual rail. And if they do, and you find that when you put a mag in you can feel those bolts there, either they stop the mag or you can feel them grinding or hear them grinding, take them out, file them down a bit and try again. You don't need too much thread on these. The other thing you can do, if you want to avoid having to remove any bolt at all from this, obviously you only have to remove one extra bolt to separate the two halves of the shell. You could actually put two holes on the same side here. It's just, the reason we use two is just to prevent it from being able to rotate like this when there's only one bolt in, but you could quite happily put two in either side. Just avoid this nut and bolt here when you're drilling the holes, but otherwise you should be good to put them kind of wherever you want. Hopefully that's useful. If you've got any questions at all, just give me a shout.